little bit about the Biosphere Reserve, just briefly, is it recognizes that the area from Port Severn up to the French River, as we've alluded to today, ecologically is a really unique and important area, and it has great diversity of species because of that lovely mosaic habitat that we've talked about. So UNESCO recognizes Georgian Bay for those unique ecological features, and our role of the Biosphere Reserve is to try to get information out to people to recognize what they can do to help protect those spaces, and to also look at how our economies can be developed without necessarily affecting the environment or trying to protect the environment. So, let's see. Okay, I'll go the correct way. A few years ago, I got asked to come out and help on one of the bird squares that were not, wasn't well documented, and got the invite out. And was really happy to be out. Well, it was on the bay in one of the outer sets of islands, but the other part of that was the fellow that was one of the people along on the hike said, you know, you talked about those spotted turtle things. He goes, yeah, I got them on my island. And he described his island, and I thought, yeah, no, it's going to be painted turtles, but you know, you get those guys. So come on along, and we go there. Within minutes of being on the island, we'd found 5 adult spotted turtles. And then shortly thereafter, there were these 3 or 4 little hatchlings. And it was just so exciting to see this, because, I mean, I've never seen a hatchling spotted turtle like that. And what was really heartening for me was, here were these little guys. This guy had already made it, this was like July, so he'd already made it through the first winter. So he's already, you know, successfully hibernated. You know, eggs didn't get predated, all that kind of stuff. And this island was an outer island, well away from roads. One family owned the island, and they're very, very willing stewards of that island and making sure that these critters would be protected. And that was great, because we thought, that's nice to see. But then, of course, you know, reality come away from those islands, come back onto the roads, and it's not such a great future sight line for our turtles right now. So today's talk, I'd like to introduce to you the 6 turtle species that are here in the Muskoka area, 5 of which are species at risk, a little bit about the natural history, a little bit about, of course, why they're at risk, and then, of course, the whole reason why you guys are here today is what can we do to help these species. So that's the talk in a nutshell. So, hands up if you recognize this one. Oh, see, I thought maybe, okay, cool. This is one of the more common, well, the only species of turtles that isn't at risk yet in our province is the painted turtle. So, you know, good for you, congratulate yourselves. And again, really, when you think of how many birds you can recognize, the fact that we have only 8 species of turtles in our whole province, it should be pretty easy to recognize, really. So here we have the little painted turtle. Things that you will use to pick out on this turtle, to recognize, of course, the reddish color on the legs and the body, the yellow stripes on the head and throat. The shell's quite low, olivey brown, smooth shell, and if you had a closer up picture, of course, you'd see along these margins, the scutes here, beautiful reddish color along those. A turtle that's actually not much bigger than the size of your hand, really. An average painted turtle is up to that sort of 12, 14 centimeter line. A big painted turtle, record is like 20 centimeters. And so how many people, you know, familiar with painted turtles, have them about your property, perhaps in a pond, see them regularly? How many people already helped one off a road this year? Oh yeah, only one? Okay. Turtles were out basking in the middle of March this year. Landings turtles. So the undershell, or the plastron on a painted turtle, and sorry, I haven't said this yet, this is the Midland painted turtle, the subspecies that inhabits this part of Ontario. So there's that beautiful reddish color that you can see. That plastron is quite light colored, but there's an outline of almost a dark butterfly kind of shape along the center line of the plastron. A little bit faded on this slide. Really stands out on that little guy, the little hatchling, that dark center line shape. And again, there's those beautiful stripes on the body. Now the sad story about this little guy, unlike the little spotted turtle that I had at my hand in the beginning, this guy was just this April down on Old Highway 69, cycling along, came across a nest that had obviously made it. They had not got predated by raccoons or anything, and painted turtles will sometimes overwinter in the nest. So these are the guys that dug themselves out this spring, and we're heading for beautiful Osler Lake, or the wetland near there, and 7 out of the 8 had been struck by something, or like this little guy got tumbled enough that he was dead. So I thought, darn, you know, the nest had survived, yet one out of the 8 was going to get down towards the water, and then, you know, what was his future going to be? So it is a pretty tough time, I say, for turtles. Painted turtles aren't particularly fussy about the habitats they use. A good variety of wetlands, from small ones to quite large beaver ponds. Basic thing would be that there's going to be a fair bit of structures for them to bask on. So logs, rocks, and things like that. Soft, muddy bottoms would be key. And as you guys know, we're blessed with a lot of this type of habitat around this area. So that's a good thing for the future for our turtle species here. And I want to reference, I meant to bring it in with me, the Ontario Reptile and Amphibian program that's happening. And Ontario Nature is spearheading this program. So an idea of getting a good record to compare with the old Ontario Reptile and Amphibian Atlasing program to see how the species are doing in the province. So they do want your sightings of, you know, bullfrogs, leopard frogs, gray tree frogs. They want to know, when did you first hear some of the frogs calling this year? Because all of that helps the data bag. So here's the one of the painted turtle. So the green squares represent the recent sightings from after 1992. And the historic are in that little gray sort of speckled square. So you can see that painted turtles do have a good distribution throughout southern Ontario, although there's some interesting gaps that seem to be occurring. Now again, that might be people that have actually registered sightings, but as Rob showed with the photo of road density too, we can find that, you know, like other species, roads are certainly affecting turtles, especially in terms of what's being hit on the road. So a study out of New York State would show that painted turtle populations for adults that live near highly used roads, like 4-lane highways, etc., so like Highway 11 types, 75% of the populations actually are male of the adult turtles. So if you go 3 out of 4 of your population is male, not a good long-term indicator for your population. So we'll see that kind of problem, unfortunately, as we see the road network develop, that it's just more and more of the males that are surviving, and unfortunately not the females. Now, that was your introduction to, a brief introduction to painted turtle. Now we're all into turtles that are species at risk. Some of you might have been at Jan's presentation this morning. Yeah, snapping turtles hit the species at risk list. Actually, in 2009, it hit the list as a species of special concern. And as you can recall, that's sort of the first level of being aware that there are indications that the population is not in good shape. Now, I suspect most people here have seen a snapping turtle in their travels and can recognize this one. So this is really good, it means, because with painted and snapping, you can identify 2 out of the 6 turtles that are around here. So you're almost to the halfway point already. Stegosaurus-like tail makes that one pretty distinctive, that low shell that has 3, actually I wish this had a pointer, 3 longitudinal lines on the shell, ragged edge on the back of the shell, and of course that massive head with those nice sized jaws ready to crunch through the stuff that hangs out at the bottom of the wetlands, a variety of things from plants to dead fish, frogs, crustaceans, crayfish, things like that. Snapping turtles prefer to spend most of the time in the water, but they'll occasionally come up to bask. Helps them get rid of the variety of leeches that they tend to have on their legs because they are so aquatic, and as a result, you know, of being so aquatic, their shell's also quite often covered with algae like that. I will say I know snapping turtles seem to be, like many of our turtles, they're creatures of habit. So if you have one that would like to come up and lay eggs in a certain part of your property, you may see her in the same spot each year roughly. And they usually hibernate in the same areas as well. So they're very much that critter that you'll see on regular patterns. In praise of older turtles. Turtles are one of those neat critters. The older they get, the better they are at reproduction. So a female snapping turtle in our northern climate, I know, it's kind of scary, isn't it, Irma? I saw that look. But the female snapping turtle in places like Algonquin is probably going to be about 20 years old before she lays eggs for that first time. She can lay eggs 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, hopefully. Some of the stuff that we're seeing now about how long turtles can live, we used to say 80, then it was sort of 100. And now some of the evidence, because, these guys are hibernating for about half of the year, and they're growing so slowly, because you're only up for 6 months of the year, and you're really only actively feeding for, 5 of that. The water temperature's pretty cool. Maybe these turtles are 200 years old, the big ones, with the half-meter shell. Maybe they're 300. We just don't know. But what we do know, though, is I think a large snapping half-meter shell turtle is a very old turtle in a northern cold water climate. So think about that when you see them. And again, think that every year they live, the more eggs she'll be able to produce. The bigger she is, that's her limiting factor, right? So that's all particularly more depressing when you know that there are some people that will go out of their way to hit or kill snapping turtles because there's a fear of snapping turtles. And we hear this all the time, people are fearful of snakes. Hognose is one that gets a bad rap. Fox snakes because they pretend to be rattlesnakes. People are often fearful of snapping turtles in water. And I can certainly say a place like Arrowhead Provincial Park, we had a beautiful snapping turtle used to come up to the dock all the time, eat little, minnows and stuff were hanging around the dock. 300 or 400 people were swimming within a stone's throw of that spot. Nobody lost a toe. Nobody was ever harassed by that snapping turtle. They just don't attack people. They're very passive in water and they will swim away. On land, slightly different story. Their plastron, that lower shell, is quite small, so they feel quite vulnerable on land. And as you know, they might hiss and huff and put up a bit of a fight if you approach them on land. But in water, they're in their element and they're not at risk. They're not a risk to you. They are at risk. So back to my praise of the older turtle gal. You can think that she's, made it to 20. She laid maybe 20 ping pong ball-sized eggs and successfully hatched out this little one. Some of the stats there again are a little bit depressing. Ron Brooks, whom Rob's worked with, of course, in the past from University of Guelph, has done a lot of the research in Algonquin. Ron's work will show that things like, for snapping turtles, there's about a 0.07% chance that the egg hatched will become an adult. There's a lot of predators of the young ones. There's a lot of potential that the eggs will be eaten. Another way to think about it, a female snapping turtle should probably lay eggs for about 60 years and about 35 eggs a time in order to replace herself. So think about, that old girl that comes up and lays eggs perhaps on your septic bed and what you can do to help protect those eggs and give them a better chance. Like the painted, snapping turtles aren't that particular about habitat. They'll move through any, again, sort of soft bottom wetland type, be it coastal wetlands, beaver ponds, and things like that. And again, we can see a reasonable range where the snapping turtle occurs throughout the province, and also quite far to the north. I had a nice discussion with someone about these guys this morning. Yes, the little map turtles, northern map turtles, sometimes called common map turtles, northern map turtles. And they're also a species of special concern. And they like to do this habit, I'd say, is very, very typical of them. A group will often bask together. And you may get 2 or 3 sort of stacked piled on top of each other as they bask. I figure that's the little one trying to get closer to the sun, or just, blocking out the sun for the one below it. They're a beautiful little turtle. They're quite skittish. They can sometimes tolerate, it seems, motorboats going by, but I tell you, if you come up with a canoe or kayak, the first thing they want to do is fall into the water. And they'll bask very close to the water to allow them that getaway of just dropping into the water. Taking a look at the map turtle, characteristics, so that you've got your painted turtle down, you know how to identify the snapping turtle. So identifying the map turtle, things to look for. The shell shape is quite characteristic for the map. So look at that center keel line in that shell. distinctive ridge, but it's a low, flat shell as well, and quite broad. On this little guy, it's very distinctive, the keel. Lots of yellow stripes on the head and the legs. Lots of little stripes on the shell itself, the upper shell. It's supposed to look like the contour lines on a map for the map turtle there. And these guys are quite aquatic. You're seeing very good paddling feet on the map turtle. Oh, for the map turtle, should say, size range. A big female could be about 27 centimeters in size. So we're looking at sort of this kind of length of a turtle. The males are about half the size, so about 13 centimeters. And so females will eat foods like crayfish and a lot of mussels and snails, so very high protein food. The males will be eating things like insects and also crayfish. Both will eat zebra mussels, so that's kind of neat to know the feed on them. But they'll still prefer snails, it seems. One other feature on that map turtle is this jagged edge on the back of the shell as well. Oh, and I forgot a key feature. I knew I would going along here. This beautiful yellow spot behind the eye is quite distinctive for the map turtle as well. So what kind of habitat? They love pretty good spaces, I'd say, map turtles. They like water, big water, rivers, lakes, generally where there's very limited development. Boat wakes and stuff will disturb them, knock them off of basking sites, so they're going to go to quieter parts of bays. And this would be a very typical spot for finding map turtles along the shores of Georgian Bay. They also like fairly good quality water. They like water with a fairly high level of oxygen, and that has to do with their hibernation, because unlike painted and snapping turtles and stuff that burrow into the mud, these guys essentially just rest on the bottom, maybe tucked into twigs and stuff, or logs and stuff, but they need a fairly high oxygen level to make it through winter. So good quality water conditions are important. Love to hear more about where people are finding map turtles in this area. Now the thing about map turtles, they also like to bask, as I say, near the surface, picking up the sunlight just at the top of the water edge, which means they're really prone to boat strikes. As I say, they're quite an aquatic species. Research done at St. Lawrence Islands National Park would show about 15% of the adult females have boat propeller injuries. It's unknown what the death rate is, because they're harder to find, obviously. If they get killed, they're sinking and not being picked up. And again, it's the females that seem to need to bask more, because they need to get that body mass size in order to be able to lay eggs. So they're at greater risk from being struck. The other issue, and I don't know how best you prevent it and things like that, but fishing lines, fishing hooks. Fishing lines that get cut and then get wrapped around legs. I suspect there's quite a few people here that have had the joy of trying to tangle, take off fishing line that's been wrapped around the leg of an animal, and unfortunately can make deep cuts in the critters. So being responsible with fishing line is pretty important. Now if you think back to the other maps, wow, a pretty limited distribution really for the map turtles across our province. Some good quality habitat, of course, east in Georgian Bay, down in the Trent Severns and the Kawarthas, out in eastern Ontario, places like Charleston Lake, I'm certainly familiar with them all, and then the pockets down through Lake Erie, but quite a scattered population basis. Where they are, like in good numbers, south end of the bay, yeah, reasonable numbers, but definitely some risks from the boat traffic in that area. And now, kind of one of my favorite turtles, I gotta say, is the blandings. We see them a fair bit because they like to be up on land. They do a lot of wandering. And the blandings turtle is a pretty easy turtle to recognize, but really important to point out, it's a threatened species. It's a step away from being endangered. Beautiful bright yellow throat makes the blandings distinctive. Shell is quite high, very helmet-like in appearance. We don't have another turtle species that has that shell type. Flecks of color on the shell, flecks of color on the head. Big eyes on the blandings, and a little crook in their mouth kind of makes them look like they're smiling. Their shell is going to be about 20-25 centimeters, so from wrist to elbow for most of us in size. I often give kids that kind of idea of measuring on something that they kind of can easily relate to. So a medium-sized turtle. The lower shell on the blandings is, so you got that yellow pattern in the middle, the black blotches on the outer edges, but that can sometimes migrate towards the center, so the whole bottom shell can be quite dark in color. You can see that beautiful yellow throat again. What's important here is there's a hinge on the turtle, so it allows the front of the plastron, the front of the shell, to close up somewhat. So if you come up to a blandings turtle on the road, you may find that she pulls her head in, and then she'll slightly draw that up to give herself a bit more protection of her head. So that might work for things like raccoons and stuff, at least to protect the face. Might not work quite as well for things like the legs. And this photo is also kind of showing this. For this turtle, this shell is concave. And that is a good indicator that that adult turtle is a male with that concave shell, because the female would have a flat plastron, or at least slightly bowed out. And if you think of the reasons for that, of course, it'd be very easy to remember this. Male turtles want concave shells, because think of how turtles mate. And the bowed out shell gives room for eggs. A female blandings needs space for about, and a large adult will have 10 to 12 eggs that she'll lay. So, next time you get to see one, not only can you make sure it gets off the road, but take that moment to go, this is a female, oh, this is a male. And then you can share that with perhaps a person that you're with in the car, and they'll be impressed that you were able to do that, I'm sure. Blandings, again, like painted and snapping, not too fussy about habitat. Beaver ponds, shores of Georgian Bay and the quiet bays, big swamps, up in the wooded parts of the swamps too. They'll do a lot of time on land. They'll do lots of long wanderings. A couple kilometers away from a wetland is not uncommon. Females especially want to wander to find good spots to lay eggs. Maybe being away from the wetland means that they might be away from where, the traffic area for raccoons and stuff. So they try to get up onto shore, into the forested areas, but into where there's some sunlight exposure to get those eggs. And as you guys know, on Georgian Bay, you might have to go a far walk to get some soil. Here's one found a good little spot, little pocket of soil in one of the rock outcrops, and she left her eggs in there. And to the best of our knowledge, those eggs at least seem to have escaped predation in the first few weeks after they were laid. But because of that propensity to do a lot of wandering, the males as well do a lot of wandering, seeking out mating opportunities, and they'll also feed on land. They'll pick up things like berries and stuff. Both are really prone to being hit by vehicles, and both are prone to being got by predators, things like foxes and raccoons and stuff like that. The blandings turtle population, again, see a nice line that goes to the north. That south line in the shield has a line of the blandings turtles, and then very scattered once we come down to the Lake Erie shore, which probably has a lot to do with the roads of that southwestern Ontario area and the loss of wetlands. A couple more turtles to tell you about. And I'll almost be finished on time, that maybe. Cool. Threatened species. The turtle, kind of formerly known as the stinkpot, now called eastern musk, gets that name because one of the defensive things is to musk when it's feeling, threatened by somebody. This little turtle, easy to recognize. Again, note the word little, size of your hand turtle. The shell, there's one out on my display table, looks like it's been almost put in a vise. It's a very high, tight shell, high dome. Two light-colored stripes on the head. The head of this turtle also is quite big for such a little turtle. And Rob and I were talking about these at lunch, the little fleshy whiskers that they have off the end of their chin, just like little pimples off the end. In theory, nice sensitive devices for finding some food as you're putting your head into the muck, for finding little snail shells and things like that, which they would crunch away. These guys are very aquatic. So like the map turtle, spends all the time in water, feeds in water, same with the stink pots. They're feisty little guys, and it will be apt to give you a nip if you pick them up. It will not be too bad. You might, you'll notice that it smarts, but not too bad. The underside of the stink pot, or musk turtle, quite a small plastron. Like the blandings, it's a partial hinge here, so they can, in theory, close it up a little bit to help give them a bit more protection. My thought on stink pots always, it looks like they really shouldn't fit in their own shells. Like, you just can't imagine that guy pulling himself in. It's looked like he's a little overstuffed. But somehow they do manage. And you see these big things too, and you sort of think, man, they must be really good swimmers. But no, they spend most of their time walking on the bottom of wetlands. They spend very little time, so they're more sort of trundlers on the bottom of mucky, shallow water systems. And Rob was talking about transmitters. Well, if you're a turtle getting a transmitter, life's a lot easier. You just have some crazy glue, gets stuck on the side of your shell. There's the antenna. There's none of this going into surgery bit. So much easier for tracking turtles. This was part of a study of musk turtles to see what are the effects of development on musk turtles. So again, well, we'll see. What are the effects of musk turtles? Well, on development, and again, fishing lines, awfully hard on stink pots. For this one, this wasn't an injury it was going to recover from. It was badly infected. The other thing, of course, is, boat strikes, taking out part of the shell. I left that lousy picture on because I said to Rob, I've only once ever caught a musk turtle basking. They're generally not known for being up on objects to bask for sunlight. They'll bask at the top of the water or just under lily pads and things like that. But that was early in the season, so it was maximum zoom of the camera. But that guy stayed up on the log and let us paddle by quietly. But they're definitely more likely to be just hanging out at the water's surface. So that's why, again, boats are so much of a problem for them. A little bit about nesting for the stink pots. These guys, you're familiar with the snapping turtle, digs a nice flat nest, lays her eggs, covers them up again, and leaves. I love this stink pot. Tucked in here, just see the eye poking out there. That's laying eggs. They're barely covered. They're just kind of left there. Not like the skink, no parental care. Well, like any of the turtles, there's no parental care, but they're really just laid in that little dirt layer. But others will just lay them on the surface for stink pots. And they lay sort of a hard-shelled egg, which is unusual for a turtle, small. About 3 to 5 eggs are laid for them. But hopefully, a few of those eggs survive. A few of the predators, birds and gulls and stuff that come around. And you may end up, hopefully, with a little stink pot hatchling ready to inhabit the nice wetland. A very limited population line. Having said that, they're very hard critters to find, and in some of the spots where they are, there's probably a reasonable population. It's just that the spaces in between, there's big gaps of where the populations aren't. And last, kind of full circle where we started, the endangered spotted turtle. So that exciting little guy that we found out on one of those islands in Georgian Bay, the hatchling, this is what the spotted turtles look like. This turtle would fit in the palm of your hand, full size, 13 centimeters would be an adult. Again, 50, 60 years old, maybe for the spotteds, not really sure. Yellow dots on the shell make it very easy to recognize. Yellow dots on the legs, nice little light brown chin, tan chin on the females. Another shot to give you an idea of the spotted turtles. Plastron similar to the blandings in that the dark spots are on the outer side and then moving in towards the center, that dark shell. Habitat. Textbooks talk about, fen habitat, bog habitats and stuff like that for spotted turtles. Agreed, but man, I've seen a lot of variety on eastern Georgian Bay of where they'll be. And I also see just sort of not classic textbook habits either. This little wetland has, features like the sphagnum and the shrubs where the spotted turtles would probably hibernate. But this little wetland was like 3 to 4 meters long, 2 meters wide maximum. It was a stinking hot day, August long weekend. It was probably about 33 degrees. It's thought that spotted turtles, when it's really, really hot, will become dormant. There's like 5 visible on this little wetland. And so how many were down below that we couldn't see? So I thought, well, they're making a mockery of not liking hot weather because they were basking out at full sunlight. And again, perhaps not what would be considered prime fen or bog habitat. But, so, most importantly, what can you guys do to help things like the spotted turtle, the endangered spotted turtle? Number one, you look at that and you're probably thinking like, man, what a gorgeous little turtle. And unfortunately, some people do, so that means they take them home as pets. Do not, and also persuade people that fox, snakes, etc., any of these species are protected. They have to be left in the wild so they have a chance to reproduce. Then, of course, for things like map turtles and snapping turtles, people want to eat them, so they're collected for food. And if I can just put that out before I forget to say it too, snapping turtles, of course, as a species of special concern, can still be harvested legally in the province. You can take 2, possess 5. A petition has gone to Parliament recently to get that legislation changed. It didn't succeed in getting it changed, but it succeeded in an amendment that means if you're trapping snapping turtles now, or taking them, harvesting them, you have to register that you've harvested one, because there was no record in the province of how many were being taken. If you think that might still be a bit of a concern, that an animal that needs to live about 60 years to lay eggs for 60 years before she replaces herself is a problem that we're harvesting them, then you probably still want to go on to something called the EBR, the Environmental Bill of Rights, and register as part of that program. You have until May 10th to share your feelings about the new amendment. I'd love to see I'd just love it to see it to be a blanket, especially in Southern Ontario. No harvesting of snapping turtles. But anyways, do let people know if you see something suspicious like potential poaching habitat. And I will finish up quickly. Wetland habitat. Obviously, we fill it in way too often, particularly near town sites. I don't know if Bracebridge is anything a bit like Perry Sound, but sometimes the only land that seems to get a new shopping mall seems to be a wetland, and that's where parking lots are put. That was part of Highway 400 development. And let's see, Tim Hortons and stuff now sits there. Coastal wetlands, they're under threat for various reasons. Water levels on Georgian Bay will be one potential, but the other one that I think is creeping up the coast, Phragmites. It's at the south end of the bay. We're seeing it pop up all the way when the new highways get constructed, pop up. Phragmites can become so dense that critters like the turtles cannot move through it. It grows very, very rapidly and very thick. So be aware that Phragmites should not be taken home and transplanted into your garden. Seed heads shouldn't be used for decorations. So speak up about that kind of thing. Waterfront development. Obviously a wall like this, not so pleasant if you're the turtle wanting to come find a spot to lay eggs, because this little token beach of sand is all prone to boat wake. So any eggs there would just get washed out. Some people do very strange things on their waterfront. That wall was about 30 meters long, covered the whole front. If you can choose the right form of transport to get out to your cottage, go for it, because you're not going to hurt a turtle when you hit it with a canoe or a kayak. Raccoons. They're lovely critters, they're very smart. Matter of fact, I sometimes think they're smarter than humans. They do really, really well with us, and they also like to feed on turtle eggs. So be nice, don't feed the raccoons or foxes, either through leaving garbage out or bird seed and things like that. Make their life a little more challenging, and so their population isn't subsidized, because they're very hard on turtle eggs. Studies would show in some places, like some of our provincial parks, like Rondo, 100% of the eggs get predated of some of the species. 100%. Because campers like to feed raccoons too, unfortunately. Rod's already shown the slide, so picture's worth 1,000 words, or so to speak. Man, roads are tough. Roads are very tough on reptiles and birds. You have a whole zone along roadways that species are impacted. And even that big blank up in Algonquin, well, you know what? There's a lot of logging roads up there that aren't shown, and they impact species too. Because ATVs use logging roads, logging trucks use logging roads. That's way too common of a sight. Unfortunately, a mature female, as I've said, it's often the females that are struck, the ones looking for egg-laying opportunities. It doesn't take much in population biology to figure out that's not a good sign. So, last but not least, what kind of things can you do? I've already heard people talk about this. Advocate for some good signages. Maybe proudly put a bumper sticker around yourself. Snapping turtle moving. Can I do the moment? If you need to move a snapping turtle off the road, you can either do the really easy, get a paddle or something, push it off the road. But you can also put your hands right above where the back legs come out. Lift up. It cannot get you. Ideally do it with a pair of gloves on. Prevent that scratch, and then you can sort of, even if you have to wheelbarrow trick them across the road, get them across the road, because you maybe have just saved a 80-year-old grandmother letting her lay eggs. Persuade your municipality. Do some interventions on some of the roads. This is a simple one down Orangeville Way, helping direct turtles to a culvert. I must say District Muskoka has been doing some stuff recently. South Bay Road will be one that they'll be working on. But some of the townships may need a prodding. This is a fence that was built in my area on Nobel Road, and it's helped protect snakes and turtles from being killed on the roadway and helping them to get culverts underneath. If you find an injured turtle, there we go. Record, handle little as possible. Container, keep them clean, calm, cool, quiet. Something over the head can help keep them quiet. No food. Most of the vets in this area will help you out. Algonquin Health Hospital, Centennial, Bracebridge, not sure for Gravenhurst, but Rob probably would know one. But there will be some vet that will give you help for an injured turtle. Last but not least, please do report the sightings that you have of these species. And if you need more information to learn more, because this is very quick today, surprisingly, our website has some information. There's some great information on the Ontario Nature website as well about these species, and you can register your sightings there. You can either register on our site or their site. It really doesn't matter because all the information gets shared between the organizations. So thank you for your time, and do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. On like we have turtles come up our driveway wanting to lay their eggs, and they'll go dig a few holes, and I understand they do that just to put a scent in to offset predators. But is there a way of protecting them, or should we be protecting them?
Okay. Ideally, yeah. And got to be careful here, the Endangered Species Act. But I do know that everyone I've talked to, if you're helping in good, informed ways, no one is going to be concerned that you're interfering with that nest. So good ways seem to be even simple, like a watering can. Water the nest area, because sometimes just the fact it gets rinsed with a bit of rain moves away that scent that might attract a predator. So that'd be simplest, some watering can. Chicken wire pegged out about a meter or a couple meters square. Do take it off after, I would err on the side of caution, probably after 2 or 3 weeks, because really if the net's not disturbed in those first 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be safe, because you don't want to trap the guys underneath,
Yeah,
right?
the incubation period is what, a couple, 2 days?
It's going to be dependent on temperatures, but typically around here, eggs get laid somewhere early June. By September, mid-September, eggs hatch. But those are the 2 easiest ways to protect the nest site. Anyone else to throw? I mean, I've heard various things with vinegar and stuff like that in the water to take off scent, but just a simple watering can and good soaking, because they say eggs don't get predated. If the turtle's laying eggs when it's raining, there's less of a chance that those eggs are predated. So, and again, it might be a scent type thing. Yeah.
On our lake, our lake has been developed for quite a long time, so we have about 80% of our shoreline with cottages where people have completely cleared up the shore. There's some, we're starting to get riparian borders again.
Yeah.
We have only one species of turtle, and that's the snapping turtle.
Yes.
Is it because they're territorial, or is it because there's no basking areas for other turtles?
Probably limited basking, so, I mean, assuming that you're not having rock outcrops and stuff coming
No,
down?
we have very little area for that.
Yeah.
We were wondering as an association if we were to put out basking logs in the areas where we still have undeveloped shoreline, whether we could attract other turtles.
Yeah. And again, Nature Scales, I think, actually has a description of how to set that up on their website. And if Nature Scales, or email me or me at the Biosphere Reserve, and I'll make sure I get you that information about setting up basking logs and stuff for turtles. Yeah.
Yeah. Assuming that they've laid them on the side of the road, and this is the problem we've got. I mean, the town hasn't done much of a job of cleaning up the sand on the side of the road, and I'm always concerned that if they lay them on the side of the road, is it realistic to move the eggs?
It's hard to move eggs effectively. So if the turtle has chosen to lay eggs there, again, I would leave them there, because to be honest, I talked to someone else. Turtle eggs, once they're laid, they can't be rolled.
Oh no, I understand that. Yeah. No, I understand that. I mean, if you take them out, put a mark on the top, and move them that way. The question is, I mean, could you put them in, for want of a better phrase, a bucket of sand or something, and serve the same purpose?
Right. Now, the only species, again, they're legally protected under the Endangered Species Act.
I understand that.
So, moving the eggs, you would want to, in a site that maybe like had to be developed, like a septic field or something, and you know you're midway through the project, got to finish it off. Then I would contact someone like Jan McDonald, get her permission about and help with moving the eggs. Sometimes M&Rs incubated them themselves. But if it's just from the side of the roadway, no, I would say leave the turtle eggs where they are. Yeah.
Plus, we've got so many
I
idiots.
know.
We've got so many idiots on our road. I'd just be scared that they wouldn't stand a hope in hell of hatching, you know.
No, I know. Well, and it's hard to see a hatchling, but to move those turtle eggs, again, it's not the easiest things to get them to incubate either.
Yeah.
So,
There's a
yeah.
question at the back there.
Oh, sorry, Kim.
Yeah, I was just curious, we work a little bit with the zoo and they do a turtle tally.
Yeah.
Well, is that all?
Yeah, so
Maybe
either,
we'll share.
the turtle tally program with the Adopt a Pond at the zoo, that's great too. Again, it's all about having the information. Ontario Nature shares with the Natural Heritage Information Centre, and I'm assuming Turtle Tally sort of shares with them as well, so, yep. And final maybe?
Oh, thank you, Glenda. I was wondering if there's been any work done with, there's all the acidic water from acid rain and that, and our waters in Muskoka are quite acidic, and we're also looking at a problem with the lack of calcium in the water. Have there been any studies to see how that's impacting the turtle population?
Yeah, I am not aware of any studies for, yeah, the lack of calcium would be an interesting one too for turtle populations. And Rob, I'll turn to you. Do you know of anything? Because, yeah.
No, but it's a very interesting
Yeah.
question.
Because again, you've seen that whole change at the bottom of the food chain because of that lack of calcium. Now, turtles will have a bit of a varied diet, especially the ones that come up on land, so that may be effective for them. But yeah, no, sorry, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Well, we should just give you one more round of applause.